Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh my gosh, I love that little tune. It gets me dancing. I love it. All right. Well, welcome to our Friday call. If you weren't dancing, I don't know what's wrong with you, especially because today we're going to talk about something that you should be dancing to, and that's cash flow. So thanks for joining us. I am Jenna Kranz. If you don't know me, I am just one of the amazing people here at Grow and Scale Your Automotive Shop. We are a team of people who is dedicated to helping you grow and scale your business. So every single week on Fridays, we jump on this Zoom call and we talk about something different every single week. We try to make it fun. We try to make it exciting. We're here to answer your questions. And we help business owners all across the United States, from here to Las Vegas, to Ohio, to Indiana, to Florida, to Georgia, to Texas, California, everywhere, you name it. Oregon, that's another one, Oregon. So thank you guys for joining us today. But Ryan's on this call, Andrew's on this call, Alyssa's on this call, and this is just a few of us who dedicate our time to helping you guys grow your business. So welcome. So let's jump into it today. We are going to be talking about cash flow management. Now, one thing we're not going to do today is we're not going to do a slideshow today. I wanted to switch it up to where it's more of like a conversation piece where we can really just kind of discuss cash flow. This is one of those things that is really, really challenging for a lot of businesses to master. And it is one of those things that can really make or break your business and the success of your business. A lot of businesses fail due to poor cash flow management, and they have a poor understanding of cash flow management. So today we're going to help you guys maybe answer some of your questions when it comes to cash flow management. So what is cash flow management? Well, in a little bit more formal term, cash flow is the net amount of cash and cash equivalents being transferred into and out of your business. So money coming in, money going out. Cash flow is all about timing. Okay. You have to have somebody managing that cash flow at all times. Maybe that person is you. Maybe you're the one writing checks. Maybe you're the one receiving payments every single day in your business. That is cash flow. And maybe sometimes you see that your account's in the negative and you're like, oh crap, I have payroll due. That is a lack of cash flow management and understanding how it works. So I'm going to bring Andrew into this call today. Ryan will also chime into this call as well as we go. But Andrew, let's talk about this today. This is your arena. I love cash flow too, but you are the cash flow king. You are the one who is completely vetted when it comes to cash flow management and all of the spreadsheets. And I always tell the funny joke, freak in the spreadsheets. I love that because you're really great at cash flow management and spreadsheets. So that's the introduction for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I do my best to manage cash flow and financial management, but I'm really good with spreadsheets, really enjoy numbers and just data management in general.
Yes, absolutely. So in your terms, what is cash flow? What is cash flow to
Um,
you?
so simply put, just what you said, cash flow is the money coming in and out of your business and managing the timing of that. Making sure that you have the available funds to pay the bills when they're due.
And not being in a hiccup.
Yes. It's not something that you can always avoid. You can't control the timing of everything, but with proper cash flow management, you can predict a lot of things. And that's where, cash flow management comes into play.
Absolutely. And one thing that's pretty alarming to me, and Grant Cardone said this, I can't take credit for this, but Grant Cardone had just posted this video. Maybe you guys saw it, but there is a significant percentage of small business owners who could not pay their rent in full and on time at the first of this month, or really most months, every month, right? So that is falling into the category of cash flow management. In your experience, is that true?
Oh, yes, 100%.
Even companies doing 15, $20 million.
Oh, yes. Yes. My experiences with those sized companies, doing, tens of millions of dollars in revenue, and even they struggle to manage cash flow and pay bills on time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did share this with you as well, but QuickBooks, they actually did a survey and they revealed that 69% of small business owners are kept up at night with concerns relating to cash flow. They can't sleep.
Yes.
Oh,
So it
yeah,
actually
I
puts
did that.
a strain. It actually puts a strain on your mental and emotional health as well. That's how serious this is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So Ryan, do you want to share an example? Because you raised your hand.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell us about
Can you hear
God.
me okay?
Yes, we can hear you
Oh,
perfect.
okay.
So over 10 years ago when we met, I'm thinking this is where you're going with that, because we've done a pretty good job since then. But tell us your experience with cash flow and what pretty much a lot of business owners are facing.
Oh, I made my decisions back in my business about how much money was in the bank account. So if I had 10 grand in the account and it was Friday, in my mind, I was able to blow all that money on Saturday and Sunday because we were going to start over again on Monday, right? So like for me, like that's how I did it. And we used to write checks knowing that we didn't have the money in the account, but knowing that we would give the people the check and it was going to take a couple of days to clear. That was cash flow to me.
Wow,
I
you
didn't
are riding dirty.
Oh man, yeah, that, right? And so that was cash flow to me, and now obviously working with Andrew a lot more and everything, and understanding cash flow more in depth and how it really works. It's the timing of it. But so many, and as we go through this today and talk about this, I want you guys that are in here to really think about this for a minute. Cash flow is timing. Cash flow is knowing. But here's the problem. You don't find many people that talk about these things. And fortunately, but unfortunately for us as small business owners and entrepreneurs, this isn't something that you're taught, and unfortunately with like bookkeeping and accounts and stuff like that, we say this all the time. They know that you don't know.
Mhm.
They know this, like that's why they have a job. They know that you don't know how this works. And so as we go through this today and talk about this, don't think that you're screwed up. Don't think that you're messed up, you know.
But
Take
it
what we
is
tell
now
you.
your duty to learn it.
Yes, it is now your duty to learn it. Like when we go through this call with you and you're paying attention to learning this stuff, if you keep screwing this up after it's been brought to the light, then yes, you are the problem. But the reason that we wanted to go over this is because we know that people don't know. Trust me, we see it every day. We know how it goes. And cash flow is finances. Remember, I talk about all the time. There's 10 things that you have to have in place to grow a business to $175 million. Number 5 is going to be finance. And it's very important because if your finances are not in order, you are in for a long, dark
Road. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I will say business owners who really can't dial in the cash flow game and the amount of stress that it puts on their psyche. And I know this could go down a whole nother rabbit hole, but the emotional health of that business owner is really, really important. But imagine like you're not sleeping at night, you're stressed about your cash flow. There's a lot, going on there, a lot of emotional drivers there for you. But this is how, especially if you work, let's say you're an employee of a company and you're on this call, but you're working for a stressed out business owner, typically their stress is coming from a lack of proper cash flow management. So just always be mindful of that. That cash flow, it really plays a role in a lot of different corners of the business. So Andrew, let's kind of dive into this. Can you share just something that comes to mind, an example of poor cash flow management that's impacted a business that you've observed?
Yeah. So a lot of things come to mind. But in previous roles, I've worked with owners who, um, maybe had good insight, like me managing their finances, but they would kind of what Ryan touched on earlier, they would see the money in the account and think, oh, well, it's there, it's available, we can spend this, even though maybe we had stuff that just hadn't posted yet. And so, they throw a wrench into cash flow by taking out a large sum to go buy a piece of equipment or machinery. And now we aren't able to pay our bills because that
My
money is
blood's
no longer
boiling.
there.
It's already boiling.
Yeah, but that is huge. That really causes harm to the company because now you're going to miss payments. You're going to be charged fees on those missed payments, return check fees if those checks have already been issued. So it causes just a lot of issues and a lot of time spent trying to correct that on the back end and then replan for, the unexpected expense.
It also affects your credibility,
Well,
right?
that as well. Yeah.
Your credibility with
Yeah.
other businesses or whoever really you're doing business with.
Exactly. And a lot of that depends on the industry, but if you have vendors and, you're missing vendor payments, then it is going to affect your credibility with them.
Yeah. And that's your reputation. And I think reputation is everything. It's
Yes.
a lot of things. So not just are you throwing a wrench into your cash flow management, but you're also, from a credibility perspective, you are now viewed as a very irresponsible, unprepared, unorganized business owner.
Exactly.
That's a shot to
Um,
the ego.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. My biggest piece of advice with that would be when it comes to large expenses, those should definitely be planned. They should be discussed with your financial management team, and planned ahead of time. That way they can budget for it and know, when would be the best time to actually front that expense.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I want to point out too. Ryan kind of mentioned it before, but let's talk about bookkeepers. And one thing that you and I were talking about in our finance team and department, because we do offer a wide variety of accounting services, but just structuring roles and responsibilities of each person within an accounting department. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is that bookkeepers, those entry level positions, they don't really know and they're not skilled and experienced in really managing cash flow. They're more of data entry. They're more about adding things into, like QuickBooks and things like that. But they're not really seasoned when it comes to true cash flow management.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a misconception that bookkeeping and accounting, and just all accountants are the same. They're not. If you're just hiring a bookkeeper, what comes to mind for me is what you said, data entry, someone who's just going to be entering receipts and transactions into QuickBooks or whatever your financial management system is. But they might not have the knowledge and the understanding of how to plan for the future and budget and offer you insights into the data that they're entering.
Right. Yeah. So cash flow management, that's going to be an upper level position of somebody who, yeah, maybe started out as a bookkeeper and has that experience, but they have so much more experience. They're more of like that strategist, problem solving, projections, things like that.
Exactly. And that's what you need with cash flow management, because it's constantly changing. It's literally money coming in and out. So you need someone who can kind of predict the changes of the company and have an understanding of where you will be at any given point.
Absolutely. So what are some things that you use, some tools that we use here and that we use for our clients that can help their cash flow stay on track? What are some of the tools and resources that we have?
Yeah. So my favorite tool is one that I've built myself. It's just the cash flow management spreadsheet. What I like about it is, for me, it's very user friendly. But I built it all myself. But it allows me to track daily cash flow, based off of what's coming up. So, like even with QuickBooks, what you enter in QuickBooks, it's generally tied to your bank account. So, kind of same thing. You're seeing your available balance in your bank account. maybe not actually accounting for bills that are due, in a few weeks or even a month from now. With my cash flow management spreadsheet, I can enter those estimated transactions in the future and get an idea of where we will be at different points in time. That's very valuable for me because I can kind of tell ahead of time, like, oh, well, things are going to be short a week or two from now. We can start implementing changes now to prepare for that shortage. And that's really what you need. You want to kind of be able to see into the future. Of course, no one can predict the future 100%, but just having an idea of where you'll be will allow you to prepare for it before it happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can get ahead of it while you still have time. And I think this is also important is how often are we looking at this? Because I know a lot of people have their bookkeepers, they have teams, like in their own business that they're looking at it once a month or they're looking at it biweekly, or how often should somebody really be monitoring this?
Yeah. So for me, I look at my spreadsheets daily. Not everyone is going to do that, but I think someone managing your cash flow should at least be checking in a few times per week. They should be making sure things are where they need to be and just checking what has changed. Things change on a daily basis. That's why I check mine daily because I like to constantly be in the know of where we're at. But at least a few times a week just to know what has changed that week and have an idea of what, next week, the next few weeks are going to look. I want to say with bookkeepers, you made a good point because a lot of time with bookkeepers or someone who's just entering, they are only looking at your books maybe once or twice per month, and they'll only be entering those transactions for a day or two that they're spending in there. They're not visiting it enough to have the proper insight to tell you, how you're doing or what to expect in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So let's kind of go back to where Ryan's conversation was, and we don't have to dive too far into it, but this is a common thing that we absolutely see, and something that we experienced years ago of just kind of not knowing, not truly understanding it. What are some of the worst mistakes that you see a lot of businesses make? And I know that a lot of us can probably answer this, but maybe somebody who doesn't even know they're making these mistakes. What are some things that are really negatively impacting cash flow due to maybe habits or activities or spending? What are some things that negatively impact a lot of cash flow?
So a lot comes to mind. The top one is personal expenses on business accounts. That will hinder cash flow tremendously.
Give us some examples.
So
Gym
I see it,
membership.
yeah, gym membership, personal vehicle payments that, the vehicle isn't owned by the business. Food is a big one. Subscriptions for personal items. It's all kinds of stuff. Even
Grocery shopping.
grocery shopping, personal rent payments, essentially just using your business to fund your personal life. And it does depend on how your business is structured, but generally for an LLC, you want to keep your business separate from your personal expenses.
Yes. So when you have bills that are due in your business, especially when we structure things. So when we go in and we structure cash flow management and really that well-oiled machine of cash flow management, and like for us and like clients, is that they're not used to this structure. It's very uncomfortable for them.
Oh, yeah.
because we cut them off, and it's interesting because this is their business ultimately, right? They're the ones who are legally responsible for this, but we come in and we're like, okay, John, you are no longer allowed to go to the grocery store and spend X amount on groceries and ice cream for your kids and your family. And sometimes that comes with ego, and they're like, oh my gosh, how dare you tell me that I can't do this anymore? But ultimately, it's about what's putting the best interest of the business first and making sure that this structure and this, basically the system that we're implementing in your business is going to be effective. Right. So first thing, we're gonna cut you off into cash. And I'm not saying like but in order to have proper cash flow management, somebody's gotta pull the plug on them.
Right.
Because there's just a lot of emotional spending there. But once we put this in, and all of these strategies are in place, I know it's going to be a little uncomfortable for most people. And how do we get through that? How do you get through to that business owner?
Well, with our meetings, we kind of explain the benefit of separating your finances, and that is the liability protections that you have as an LLC. That's the whole point of forming an LLC, is to protect your personal assets and yourself from the activities of your business and any suits that might come towards your business. Secondly, if you're using your business accounts for personal expenses, that is a form of payment to yourself. So what I always tell our clients is it's better to just pay yourself and have that money in a personal account, use it however you want, than to have those transactions on the business. So we have that conversation about, let's just move this into a salary or an owner draw. That way you're still able to cover your expenses and it looks proper on the books.
Yeah.
And through that, we're usually able to make that transition, but it does take time. I think just like any habit that someone forms, it takes time to make new habits.
Yeah, absolutely. I just know that's a big thing it's definitely a change that some people aren't really ready for, but it's so necessary into building that well-oiled cash flow machine. Let's kind of start like with newer businesses, because I know we have a couple of people on here with newer businesses. Most business owners start their business for two reasons. That's number one is they want to be their own boss. They are sick and tired of being told what to do, and they want to be their own boss. Number two is they want to make more money. Okay, so fresh in the business, right? They're like, ooh, I'm going to go tint some windows. I'm going to go lay some paint protection film. And they're just thinking about the money, right? But come to find out, accounting and books is the most, like god awful part of their business that they weren't expecting to have to deal with. And usually they don't learn until a huge mistake's already been made. But let's kind of talk about, number one, how bringing on financial experts early on can help your business kind of build that solid foundation of managing cash flow. But we also were talking about how when they get $100, they think that they're going to keep $100, So let's talk about new businesses. When should they bring somebody in?
So again, it depends on the amount of capital that the business has to spend, but I would say as soon as possible. The reason for that is if you start your business with a good financial plan in place, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and money in the future. Versus if you kind of wing it in the beginning, you're going to pay someone like myself a lot of money to go back and try to fix and correct those mistakes from early on. So it's worth taking the time and even the money early on to make sure it's correct from the start, so you don't have to correct it later. So as soon as possible, get your finances dialed in. I would say work with an accounting firm or someone who has a lot of experience and can help you strategize. When it comes to taxes, there are ways that you can limit your tax liability. And the best way to do that is working with a tax professional who can help you strategize. You need a budget, I'd say, from day one. You need to have a good idea of what everything's going to cost you. You used the analogy earlier, someone earns $100. Well, you didn't earn $100. You have to deduct estimated taxes, any kind of payroll, labor expenses, overhead costs, just everything that goes into earning that $100. And at the end of the day, it might be you only made $20. So working with a financial professional is going to help you envision that and better understand what your profit margins are early on.
Yes, absolutely. And this is where becoming a laborer versus like a strategist, and becoming like that technician versus being an entrepreneur. So especially in the trades industry, not just in the automotive industry, but in the trades business, you do have those people who are really great in their trade. But they don't really know how to strategize yet. They don't really know how to make those business decisions. So hiring somebody early on can explode their business for the better, or not hiring could tank it.
Right. It could cause a lot of issues not having someone on board who can help with that strategy.
Yes.
Um, Not necessarily saying that it would tank it, but it will create a lot of issues.
Avoidable.
Nothing avoidable issues,
Right.
exactly. Essentially, at the end of the year, you want to be able to hand over your financials to your CPA and have them file your taxes with as few questions as possible. But unfortunately, what I see in a lot of small businesses is they just can't do that because their financials weren't properly managed throughout the year.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's I want to jump around. I have a lot of really great questions, but also feel free if you guys would like to post your questions in the chat box relating to cash flow management. Drop your questions here. That way we can address them as we go, and you guys can kind of get more insight on, tailor to your questions. But let's go into what's one of your I don't want to talk about all the negatives, right? Like that's where I don't want this to go. But what are some of the really successful how can I phrase this, benefits if we have proper cash flow management? What is some of the beauty that business owners can expect when they do have this stuff in place for long-term
Well,
growth?
yeah. So again, a lot of things that come to mind, but as a business is growing with proper financial management, it's going to be easier to obtain financing. So you get to a point where, let's say you want to purchase a building, or you need to finance equipment or buy a vehicle, anything along those lines, you're going to have to present the lender with your financials. If those are all dialed in, a lender is going to be more likely to lend to you, especially if you're a new business. You're not going to have credit established, and therefore they're just going to be going off of your current financials. If they're a mess, then you're probably not going to get the financing. Whereas if it's all dialed in, well, now you're going to have a conversation. They're going to take you a bit more seriously. Along with that, taxes. If you're tracking everything properly, everything is entered correctly, it's going to be much easier to save on taxes. You're never going to avoid paying taxes, but there are a lot of deductions that businesses qualify for, and there's a strategy to it. Sometimes it makes sense to spend money at the end of the year to limit your tax liability. And working with a financial professional, they will help you plan for that to lessen that tax bill.
Yeah, absolutely. I speak with a lot of business owners that do have a big vision for their company and where they want to get to, like really, really ambitious goals, 10 million, 25 million, 100 million, all of that. But this is really the very, very basic beginning point of being able to get there. So if they are ambitious about owning their own building and investing in real estate and being able to, invest in other opportunities, regardless of what business they're in, this is something that has to be pretty much mastered.
Yeah, 100%. It's financial integrity. You have to make sure everything's dialed in, because to scale to those sizes, those numbers, people are going to look at your finances. They're going to look at your books. They're going to want to know how you're operating your business, and that's directly tied to how you manage your finances. So just making sure everything's dialed in, that's how you're going to be able to scale to those.
Yes. And isn't it beautiful when you can walk into a bank and say, this is what I need? and these are your partners, these are your power partners, and you built that credibility and you look amazing on paper, but it's all legitimate just because the team of people behind you has set you up and prepared you for this. But to be able to walk in, especially when there's opportunities and you need a little bit of capital, to be able to go into those, banking partners and say, hey, this is what I need.
Oh yes, it's really wonderful. Some of the largest deals I've worked on, multi-million-dollar deals, and it's only because finances were managed correctly. Being able to hand that over to the bank and they go to bat for you because everything is outlined and organized how it's supposed to be. And that kind of takes me back to something we've discussed before about accounting. Like accounting is very procedural. You're not making this up. Like there's processes, there's procedures that's just in place, and any financial professional should know the basic fundamentals.
Absolutely. This is something that I think business owners, especially probably the newbies, they don't really think about, but also people who've been in this for a while, but they like to do this stuff themselves. And I don't understand why. No judgment, no judgment. I don't get it. Okay. I couldn't imagine. I say this lightly because I've been there and I've been in that position where like I had to learn QuickBooks. Obviously, I know how to operate QuickBooks, and I'm very, very grateful for knowing how to operate these systems, because when we're talking the lingo, I can keep up, right? And that came with some history and having to do some legwork on my own and learning these systems. But a lot of business owners, they are operating in different areas of their business. In the install side, they're overseeing production, they're overseeing sales, they're overseeing marketing, inventory, so many different departments. But then they also, and HR and hiring, that's a whole nother animal. But then they also want to be the one responsible for these books and the accounting and the cash flow management. But they have this big, big vision of growth. But just understanding this one principle of don't do it yourself.
Yeah. Right. I understand the perspective with small business owners. They want to save the money by doing it themselves. But you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's kind of what business owners fall into. Like thinking about accounting as just income and expenses. It's not that simple. There are equity accounts, there are liability accounts. They work a little bit differently than just expenses, and all of that should be accounted for properly on your books. So then when your accounts, your chart of accounts end up not being categorized correctly, it creates all of those issues that we talked about earlier that you then have to hire someone to go back and try and fix. It's so much, I don't want to say easier. I mean, it is easier to hire someone, but it's a better decision to have someone who knows what they're doing, handling your books early on. That way you prevent all of those hiccups later in the future.
Yeah, and you're not completely out of it. You're not completely just handing it off and just, okay, go do what you want. No, like you're still overseeing. That's part of being the business owner, is you're still having these conversations. But it's more about asking questions with your accounting team is, what is this? Why is this like this? Or why did we do it this way instead of this way? Like having the basic understandings of financials and accounting is definitely important and necessary when being a business owner. But that's where the trust comes in, as well as having that team that you can trust and they're going to do a great job, but you don't have to have your hands in it in order for it to be successful and productive.
Right. And when hiring a service like that, whether it's an accounting firm or a bookkeeping service, there should be full transparency. Like you should own your books. You should be able to sign in and access everything, see what they're doing, and ask questions. You should be able to ask those questions and get, answers that make sense to you. And that way you understand kind of what's happening in the back end. Now, it doesn't need to be detailed to the point where they're telling you, oh, this type of account is used because of, whatever. You don't need to know all of that, but just being able to answer questions about specific transactions and why they were handled in the way they were.
Absolutely. We talked about this last week on the marketing call, and you kind of just brought it up, is like owning the credentials to your actual softwares and account management and all of that, right? Same with your marketing side, you want to own all those credentials as well. But when it comes to I just had a brain fart, but when it comes to passwords, that's kind of where I was going with that. I had my brain, my ADHD, but with those passwords and things like that, I know that a lot of accounting firms will set those up for your business, but the second that you leave, they're no longer yours.
Yeah. So I have seen that in previous accounting firms that I've worked with. And I think that's a terrible way of doing business. It creates a lot of confusion should, that client ever stop working with you. Kind of what we do with our clients here and what I would recommend is you own all of that. So you should be setting up, not necessarily setting it up, but establish the QuickBooks subscription or whatever software that you're using, and then give your firm access to your account. You can, like in QuickBooks, you can give someone accountant access, and then they can get in there and manage everything without owning your file. Same thing with taxes. There are different tax websites depending on what state you're in. You should set those accounts up and have access. That way you can sign in and make sure that taxes are being filed on your behalf. But then granting user access to your accountant, to your firm, so they can get in and file those taxes on your behalf.
Right, absolutely. And when you have that team of accountants and bookkeepers and all of that, see, I like to know, I like to make sure that like taxes, everything is good. That's why it's great to have logins and knowing kind of where things are at. But how often should people be reviewing this with their basically their finance team?
Definitely. So as a business owner, if you're hiring someone to manage everything for you, I would say at least monthly. At least once a month, you want to sit down together and go over what has been done. What's been done this month? What were my taxes? What were my expenses? What was my income? Review some reports. What standard is your profit and loss and your balance sheet? And just get an overall generalization of how the business is doing. They should be
Absolutely.
able to do that at least once per month.
Absolutely. I remembered, I even wrote it down so I didn't forget. So what I want to point out to people is when you hire these experts, kind of went into those usernames and things like that, but when you hire these experts, it should not create more work for you as the business owner. I see this a lot, right? They hire these bookkeepers or, my finance guy, my finance girl. But then you ask questions and they'll say, well, I don't know, they're waiting on me to get back to them about that, or kind of just creating more work for the business owner, like in order for them to do their job. Somebody strong in their position in finance, especially because numbers are black and white. It's not like marketing. See, marketing, your marketing team needs direction. They need to understand your vision. They need to understand the branding. There's a lot involved there. But when it comes to math and it comes to numbers and it comes to accounting, it is what it is, right? And your professional should not have to put anything really on hold when it comes to certain tasks. Now, I'm not saying the business owner should be absent. That's not what I'm saying here.
Right.
But I've had clients who did have a finance team, and I mean, they really rely on the business owner to bring all of the answers and all of the solutions. And it's like, look, the business owner is not the expert in this. You're supposed to be the expert in this. This is why they hired you.
And I think that, so a few things. One, that kind of goes back to the difference between a bookkeeper versus an accountant. If you're hiring a bookkeeper, they're probably not going to have all the answers. They're just entering the data.
True.
But if you hire an accountant, then they should be able to provide those answers. The second thing that I wanted to touch on is it also comes down to access. As the business owner, you're probably going to have access to the receipts, to the transactions, to the invoices. You have to make sure that information is shared with your accounting firm or your accounting team, because that's where they're going to gather the information to actually, reconcile accounts and make sure
100%.
transactions are correct. But as long, like, let's say you have someone in-house who has access to all of those things, they shouldn't need any information from the owner. They should be able to retrieve all of that themselves and have the know-how to properly enter it. I would expect maybe a few questions if they don't understand like what the transaction was for. But that shouldn't be a drawn out explanation. It should just be a quick like, hey, what was this for? And then they get it done.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like sometimes you'll send me a little list and say, hey, I need this gas receipt or whatever it is. But even like from the business owner side, you do also want to be able to help them in their job from a sense of not being the roadblock either. So if there's something that they need, you got to get that over to them so that they can do their job successfully. So if it's like a receipt or anything like that, making sure that they have that. But from like a planning perspective, let's say like for budgeting, projections, things like that, somebody who, let's say they're a little bit higher up than just a bookkeeper, an entry level finance position in accounting, they should kind of know their stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They should know their stuff. It
They
it
should
should
be able
be
to explain why things are how they are.
exactly. If you're having someone who is doing projections for your company, not only should they be well versed in accounting, but they should also be familiar with your industry. It's difficult to do projections in an industry that you don't know anything about.
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with people who know the industry. They know this type of business. That's really important, especially like just for bookkeeping, like categorizing properly and things like that. Really, really important. But what are some things that people can do? Let's kind of tie this up, but what are some things that people can do, like maybe like in a short, brief 3-step process to really start improving their cash flow? I think probably first is sitting down and understanding where we're at.
Yeah.
But what are some
So
steps?
like if I was coming into a new business and kind of looking, I would analyze your transactions. I'd want to see about a month or two worth of transactions to understand your spending habits. From there, we would try to cut back where we can. Most businesses are probably spending more than they need to. And that's not always unnecessary spending, but lots of times you can make small changes that will decrease those costs, even negotiating contracts or anything of that nature to cut back. After that, you want to make a plan. That's where the budget comes in. You want to budget for the future. Budget projections, they're kind of the same thing. But you want to put a budget together at least 12 months into the future to kind of plan where you want to go. That's the strategy. That's the outline. That would be a bit more involved with the owners. Just asking them questions. What does this look like for you? Where do you want to be? But laying that out. And then once the plan is in place, that's where those monthly meetings come in, where you can go over your progress and see, did you hit your targets? Are you where you wanted to be? Do we need to reassess? Do we need to change things around? Doing that monthly will ensure that you stay on track and are working towards the goal. And then kind of even adding on to that, I would be meeting with your tax professional quarterly, every 3 months, giving them quarterly reports. This is where we're at. And then they can give insights onto things you can do to lessen that tax bill at the end of the year. That doesn't need to be too involved, maybe an hour meeting every 3 months just to kind of go over reports and make sure you're not going to go a whole lot. But being ahead of that will definitely help you. It goes into just cash flow management and knowing what you'll owe before it even happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then also having that plan in place, you can communicate with your production team. You can communicate with your sales team. These are where all of your conversations are going to begin and end, right? Is all in that cash flow management. That cash flow management is king. That is the king. So everything else works underneath that. So then you can have all your conversations with your teams. Once that plan is in place, you communicate what your goals are, what we need in order to meet those cash flow requirements. That's what I love about kind of how we do things here is we're able to actually gauge something.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we're not guessing every day on what we need to do, what we need to make happen. How many calls do we need to make? Right? There's so much involved just in cash flow management. So I think this is a new for a lot of people. I know that this is not something that everybody is super familiar with, but there's just so much value that this brings in knowing. And it just starts with one step, just opening your mind to great. I mean, you do or you don't. If you don't open your mind to it, well, you can expect the unexpected. But if you really use this to your advantage, you can build a really, really great company.
Definitely. It all falls back on finances. That's the foundation for anyone who is in business.
Absolutely. I love it. Ryan, anything you want to add to the people on here? This is also going to be recorded, so people will be able to tune in later, even if they're not here now. But anything you want to add to cash flow?
No, I think you guys touched on a lot of it, but the importance of it is the biggest thing. You know, I never realized how important finances of a business were. A lot of people think the finances of a business are bring in as much money as you can and pay what you can whenever you can. And it's unfortunately not the way that it works. So yeah, that's what I would add.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen just based on our clients and how detrimental it is to not have this stuff in place, even in, you know, our own experiences with like years ago in another automotive shop that you owned. It was one of the hardest things. And I think that's what makes what we do now so special is that we are able to share our mistakes and just be able to help people be proactive instead of reactive when it comes to improving their cash flow management in their business.
Yes, very, very.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, anything that you want to add before we wrap things up?
No, I think we've covered a lot with cash flow. I know just managing finances in general, it's a daunting task for business owners. But I highly recommend just working with a skilled finance professional who can guide you through that process. Like you said earlier, they should make your job easier.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much. Just a disclaimer, we are not licensed CPAs. We're not licensed tax professionals. We are not lawyers. We are not attorneys. And we are not advising you to do anything else but to seek out advice from licensed professionals. So this is what works for us. This is what we've done in our business. This is what has allowed us to get to the success and the level that we've been able to reach. So always seek out professional advice from people licensed and certified in your state and region, wherever you may be, and just take what we have and discuss it with them and implement it how you wish. But thank you guys so much. And we will see you guys next week right here on Zoom for next week's call. So thanks again. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You guys can reach out to us through Facebook on our Grow and Scale Your Automotive shop. We have a private page, or you can email us. So I can be reached at Jenna, JENA.automotivegrowth@gmail.com. Andrew can be reached at andrew.automotivegrowth@gmail.com. And Ryan can be reached at ryan.automotivegrowth@gmail.com. So thank you guys so much. Have a remarkable day and go and master your cash flow management.
Go make some money.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.